You're blocking our view. Shut up, Hot Wheels.
For every dreamer who dares to reach the spotlight, there's a moment when life finally says, "It's your turn." For Isabelle Tate, that moment had just arrived. A Tennessee girl with a heart full of music, courage, and fire. She had just landed her very first acting role in the brand new series 911, Nashville. It was supposed to be the beginning of everything. Instead, it became her farewell. At only 23 years old, Isabelle's story came to a sudden, heartbreaking end, leaving behind a silence that even Hollywood couldn't fill. Her first role would also become her last, and yet, within that single performance, she managed to touch millions. Because what few knew was that behind her smile, behind every word she spoke on screen, Isabelle was fighting a battle that no script could ever capture. A private fight that tested her body, her faith, and her strength. And now, with her passing shrouded in unanswered questions, the world is finally beginning to see just how much light she carried in such a short time. Long before the lights of 911, Nashville ever touched her face, Isabelle Tate was already writing her own quiet script, one made of kindness, creativity, and relentless hope. Born and raised in Tennessee, she wasn't just another dreamer chasing fame. She was the kind of soul who wanted to make the world lighter, one person at a time. Friends say she had this warmth that filled a room, a laugh that could turn the dullest day into a memory. When she wasn't volunteering with local groups or caring for animals, Isabelle was in her own little world of rhythm and words, writing songs late into the night. Music wasn't her escape. It was her language, her way of saying, "I'm still here." And when she finally decided to chase her acting dream, it didn't take a dozen auditions or endless callbacks. The very first project she read for, 911 Nashville, became her first booking. It was the kind of one-in-a-million story that felt written by fate itself. A young woman with no connections, no spotlight, just pure talent, walking onto a set for the very first time. No one could have guessed it then, but that single role would turn her into something far greater than an actress. It would turn her into a symbol of quiet courage. Proof that sometimes destiny doesn't wait for experience. It just recognizes heart. When 911 Nashville finally premiered, audiences met a character who, for a brief but unforgettable moment, stole the entire episode. Julie. She wasn't the lead. She wasn't meant to carry the scene. But Isabelle Tate made sure you couldn't look away. Julie was a young woman in a wheelchair, sitting in a crowded club, just trying to enjoy a night out. Then came the moment that hit everyone in the chest, when another woman mocked her, blocking her view, and called her Hot Wheels. For a split second, there was silence. Then came Blue, played by Hunter McVey, performing a striptease on stage, and the camera found Julie's eyes. There it was, a mix of hurt, pride, and defiance that said more than words ever could. It wasn't just acting. It was truth, because Isabelle knew that pain. She knew what it meant to be looked at differently, to be underestimated, to have to fight for normalcy in a world that didn't always make space for her. And somehow, in those few seconds of screen time, she turned a background role into a message. That strength doesn't always shout. Sometimes it just refuses to back down. Viewers didn't know her story then, but that performance was her quiet way of saying, "I've lived this. I know this fight." She played strength because she lived it. And in that single scene, Isabelle Tate became more than an actress. She became the reflection of every person who's ever been told they couldn't rise, and did it anyway, behind the bright lights, behind the laughter, and that unmistakable glow in her eyes. Isabelle was carrying a battle that most could never see. At just 13 years old, she was diagnosed with a progressive neuromuscular disease, one that slowly weakened her leg muscles and, over time, made a wheelchair part of her daily life. But if you looked at her Instagram, you wouldn't see despair. You'd see courage. You'd see a young woman refusing to be defined by what was happening to her body. In a post from 2022, she opened up to her followers, writing, "This has been a difficult journey for me because having to accept help and surrender to the progression of this condition has been extremely hard." She admitted she had moments where she felt lost, that the illness was breaking her down, both physically and spiritually. But then came the shift, that unmistakable fire that made her who she was. "I would have never expected something like this to happen to me," she wrote. "But I can't change it. So I'm choosing to embrace it and not let it define me." It wasn't a post meant to inspire. It was raw honesty, the kind that hits harder than any performance, because behind the makeup, behind the camera smiles, there was a woman who faced her reflection every morning and decided she would still rise. Every audition, every song she recorded, every time she showed up on set, it was an act of defiance, a declaration that she would live fully, even if her body tried to tell her otherwise. But few knew how much pain she hid behind that radiant smile, and how every step she took, or couldn't take, was powered by something far stronger than muscle. It was powered by pure will. When the news of Isabelle Tate's passing broke, it didn't just ripple through Hollywood, it hit straight into the hearts of everyone who had ever met her, even once. Among the first to speak out was her 911 Nashville co-star, Hunter McVey. He shared that he didn't know Isabelle before filming, but from the moment they met on set, something about her stood out. It was his first day shooting, nerves high, pressure heavier than ever. And between takes, Isabelle leaned over with that same gentle confidence she was known for. Just a few words, a kind smile, a bit of encouragement. But it was enough to calm him. After the scene wrapped, they talked. He remembered her great energy, the way she lifted the room even when the cameras stopped rolling. "She brought joy to a lot of people," he said, "and I'm thankful I got the chance to work with her. A part of her will live on forever in that pilot episode." His words echoed what so many others felt. Isabelle didn't just act, she imprinted. Soon after, her talent agency, the McVey Agency, posted their own heartbreaking tribute on Instagram. They wrote, "We are deeply saddened and completely heartbroken to share that Isabelle Tate passed away on October 19th. She was 23. I've known Izzy since she was a teenager, and she recently returned to acting. She booked the first series she auditioned for, 911 Nashville. She had a wonderful time." That single line, "She had a wonderful time," carried so much weight. Because for Isabelle, that one chance was everything. Her dream had come full circle, and she lived it with joy. Friends, classmates, and co-stars flooded social media with memories, snapshots of her laughter, messages about how she never complained, how she made others feel seen. The word that kept coming up was light. She wasn't just part of a cast. She was the kind of person who reminded everyone why they loved what they did. Even now, that same light she carried seems to flicker in every message, every photo, every person who refuses to let her name fade away. For all the love Isabelle shared with the world, her truest circle was always her family. The people who knew her before the cameras, before the headlines, before any of it. Her mother, Katerina Kazakos Tate, wasn't just a parent. She was Isabelle's anchor. Friends say she was the steady voice in every storm, the one Isabelle once called her shining beacon of light. And then there was Daniela, her sister, her mirror, her partner in laughter and late-night talks. In the words of her obituary, her sister was her best friend. They were inseparable. Two souls bound by more than blood, by a love that could fill any silence. Her stepfather, Vishnu Jayamohan, and her father, John Daniel Tate, each played a role in the mosaic of her life, teaching her patience, humor, and resilience. And even though she left them far too soon, those who knew her say the strength she carried was a reflection of everything they poured into her. Away from the set and the spotlight, Isabelle was a student of both life and ambition. She graduated from Middle Tennessee State University with a bachelor's in business, not because she wanted a backup plan, but because she believed in balance. She wanted to chase dreams and build something solid. That's who she was, a believer in both heart and logic. And then there was her music, the side of Isabelle few people got to see. She wrote songs that friends still describe as haunting and hopeful. Lyrics filled with honesty and light. A few of them were recorded, quietly shared among close friends, and now they've taken on new meaning. Those songs, unfinished, unpolished, are now the echoes of a voice that can't be silenced. When her loved ones talk about her, they don't just remember the actress, or the student, or the fighter. They remember a girl who showed them that grace and grit can live in the same heart. That even when life hands you impossible odds, you can still choose to shine. In the days following her passing, one question has quietly lingered in every headline, every comment thread, every whisper across social media. What happened? Her cause of death has not been made public, and perhaps it doesn't need to be. What matters more is what she left behind. Out of respect for her family, no speculation has been shared, no assumptions made. Just grief and gratitude, pouring in from every corner of the internet. On TikTok, fans posted clips from her 911 Nashville debut, overlaying soft piano music and words like, "Thank you for showing us courage." On Instagram, the comments under her old posts have turned into something resembling a memorial. Messages from strangers saying how her story helped them accept their own struggles. And on Twitter, one fan wrote simply, "Sometimes the brightest lights burn for the shortest time." It's true. There's something almost poetic about it. The way Isabelle lived her truth so openly, yet left this world so quietly. No drama, no spectacle, just a wave of love in her absence. It's as if she gave her audience one last performance, not on stage, but in spirit, reminding them that strength isn't about lasting forever. It's about leaving something worth remembering. Sometimes the most inspiring stories end in silence, and in Isabelle's silence, the world is still listening. There are stories that end quietly, and there are lives that refuse to fade, even when they do. Isabelle Tate's story is both. She lived with courage, performed with heart, and left behind a story far greater than any script. In just 23 years, she managed to teach the world something most of us take a lifetime to learn. That strength doesn't mean standing tall, it means standing true. Her time on earth was brief, but the imprint she left behind is permanent. Not just in her performance, but in every person who now looks at her and sees a reflection of hope. The girl who turned her pain into purpose, her fear into fire, and her dream into something real. So tonight, as the world remembers Isabelle Tate, let it not be with tears alone, but with gratitude for the light she shared and the lessons she left us. If her story touched you, if her bravery made you think a little deeper about your own, drop a word of remembrance below. Share a quote, a thought, a prayer. Something to keep her name glowing in the space where it belongs, among the stars. Because in the end, true stars never fade. They just change where they shine.